Okay, ladies, you've asked for it and you're going to get it today. There's been so much buzz in my community, and even just friends and people in the business that are telling me all about peptides. It's like the buzz, even though I think it's been buzzing for many years, but I'm only just getting on this bandwagon. And as for myself, I've tried a couple of peptides in the last couple of months. And so we can talk about that as well. But ladies, I've got with me today somebody that many people have said, Karen, you have to get this woman on your podcast. She is the peptide expert, Natalie Nidham. She is
Karen Martel.
She's a holistic nutritionist, human potential and epigenetic coach with a particular interest in longevity. She runs a large community on Facebook and Mighty Networks and is the host of the Biohacking Superhuman Performance podcast. Nat was introduced to peptides and peptide bioregulators a few years ago and has been fascinated with the potential that they represent for human health span and lifespan ever since. Nat is committed to sharing and learning information on these with as many people as possible. Like many doctors and researchers in the space, she truly believes that these tiny proteins have the power to revolutionize medicine in the very near future. You can find her at natnidham.com, and I will link to that in the show notes. But welcome, my new friend, Nat. How are you?
Oh, it's so nice to be here, Karen. It was, ladies, those of you listening, you need to know we just had the greatest chat before the chat. So
Yes.
I think we're going to be chatting a lot in the future.
I think so too. I was telling her that she's actually got me as an avid listener to her podcast, which is a huge compliment because there's not too many podcasts that I binge anymore. Like I'll find the odd one that this episode's okay, but I've actually been listening to several of your podcasts, Nat. So, it's great. I love it. Great information.
Thank you.
I want more from you though.
All right. Well, how can I serve you today, Karen?
Yes,
how can I help?
Right? This is all about. Okay, so I am so new to peptides. They're confusing to the beginner for sure.
They totally are.
What are they? Are they? And we're both in Canada. They're illegal in Canada.
Yeah, it's funny. No-ish. They're not really illegal because they're very gray zone, right? Okay. So the fact of the matter is that for the most part, they're not approved by the FDA or by Health Canada. So I know you have a lot of your listeners are in the US as well. And so there are some that are approved, and then they're approved for very specific purposes. And what's happening is, so for most people in the biohacking space, which is a very sexy word to some people and a very ugly word to other people, biohackers are really people who are on the hunt for what is it that can help them to either get healthy, fix their bodies, or be better, right? Any of those things. And the fact of the matter is that the biohacker will stop kind of at nothing to get to that end goal. Very often there are people who have been not served by the allopathic model. They've been let down. They've been told there's no answers, or they've been left to solve their own problems. And so these are people that are just looking for answers wherever they can find them. The other kind of biohacker is the person that's like, yeah, I want to be better than everybody else. I wanted to be the best version I can be. I want to live longer. I want to kick ass until the day that I'm not kicking anything. I want it all. I want to look good. I want to feel amazing. And I want that health span, lifespan, longevity. I want all of it. Right. So you got guys like Dave Asprey who claim they want to live till 180 years old. I personally find that slightly exhausting sounding, but hey, to each their own.
It's like, really? That long?
Seriously, 180. That's a really long time. You're going to have to make a lot of money, man. But he does, and he will. And that's okay. For me, to me, it's about quality of life. Right.
Yeah.
So it's being vibrant and contributing to my world and being able to enjoy the world for as long as possible and as well as possible. So when we get to peptides, we're getting into this world of compounds that are not particularly approved for human use for the most part, but that
in the United States too?
Anywhere. Oh, well, no, that's not true. So there's certain
Russia?
peptides like, so let me warn your audience. So one of the biggest problems of peptides is names. It's a massive problem. Naming peptides, it's like, the alphabet soup, people got together and say, okay, let's make up some names. So we have thymosin alpha 1 and thymosin beta 4 and CJC 1295 and BPC 157. And it's like
VSIP.
VSIP, but no, VIP and KPV. Like it's just like, people look at me and go, are you kidding me? Like, how do you even know what any of this stuff is? So it is what it is. The truth of the matter is there's no marketing people involved. There's nobody here who's sitting there thinking, how do we get people to buy more of this stuff? It's kind of like a bit of a private society where if you're really interested in kind of going beyond what's normally accepted in the world, you're coming into this world and saying, I'm taking ownership of my health. I'm doing my due diligence. I'm taking responsibility. And I'm doing my N of 1 experiments. N of 1 means I'm N, and I'm going to see how this works for me. So to some people, that's super scary because there's no drug company that sat there and said, okay, we're going to take 20 people here and 20 people there. 20 of them are going to do this. 20 of them are going to do that. Then we're going to see what happens on the other side. And then in 15 and 20 and 30 years. The fact of the matter is that most of the drugs on the market, we find out after the fact that they have a fair number of side effects and whatnot. And which is not at all to say that peptides are as safe as drugs. There's a lot we don't know about peptides, and they are incredibly powerful.
Yes.
I think that the reason why a lot of people are willing to tap into peptides to see how they can be affected by them is because what a peptide is it's a fragment of a protein that is naturally occurring in your body. So this is basically, it's a trigger that is triggering a process in your body that your body does. So it's not necessarily suppressing. Like when you look at a drug is cutting off a pathway, or it's suppressing something, or it's making something not available. In the case of a peptide, for the most part, and I'm trying to think and see if there's any exceptions, but I would say that by and large, what a peptide is it's a molecule that has a receptor in your body somewhere.
Right.
And when it hits that receptor, when it feeds into that receptor, that initiates a cascade of events that
is it like bioidentical hormones?
Kinda. Yeah, because a bioidentical hormone is estrogen. It docks into the receptor and your body takes over from there, right?
Yeah.
And your body, because it's bioidentical, recognizes that estrogen as an estrogen and is therefore able to put it through the pathways that it needs to clear it. Right. The tricky thing about estrogen is depending on your genetics, you may be moving that estrogen into different metabolites, some of which may be better or worse for you. And so, working with someone like you, I'm sure that you're looking at all those downstream metabolites and helping people to understand what are the things I need to do to assist my body in clearing these things if I'm not so good at doing it myself. Right.
Right.
In the case of a peptide, for the most part, it gets broken down in the body. It doesn't stick around for very long. It gets the ship rolling, as it were, and then it's done. It's out. So it doesn't stick around. So all that being said, I'm going to repeat. Number one, I'm not a doctor. Number two, there's a lot we don't know. So I'm not going to sit here and tell people you get a free pass. Sometimes people have bad reactions to peptides, and we can talk about those.
Yeah.
But I will say that in 3 years of running a community of almost 14,000 people now, it is remarkable what we've seen happen with using these peptides responsibly.
Really? Yeah. They just seem like they're this like secret amazing thing where it's like, are these as good as I think they are? Like, could this really be true? And then you think, well, why is it not approved in Canada and the US then? Why are these things not approved for human use?
Well, so I think that part of the answer is because they haven't been picked up by pharma companies. So
and why not? That's like
okay, because they can't patent them.
Okay.
As soon as they figure out how to patent them, which they have on a couple of occasions, as soon as they can patent it, it gets taken off the market that we can buy it from, like the research labs and compounding pharmacies. And now it's called a drug. So some of the peptides that are in that category are a peptide called thymosin alpha 1. Thymosin alpha 1 has orphan drug status in the US. I don't even think it has that in Canada. It's approved as a drug in about 30 different countries around the world. It is incredibly powerful for modulating the immune system, for autoimmune disease, for treating certain viruses that shall remain nameless. There are actually clinical trials in hospitals in countries overseas where they were able to administer thymosin alpha 1 to people who were super duper sick and about to die, and they didn't die.
Wow. I heard that. Mm-hmm.
And yet it's now virtually impossible. Even functional medicine doctors in the US who used to be able to order it from compounding pharmacies no longer can order it from a compounding pharmacy because it's been taken away from the compounding pharmacies.
Of course it
Thymosin beta 4 has been now named a biologic by the FDA. And so it's been taken away. That's another thymus peptide. And so thymosin beta 4 has so it's 43 amino acids. So let's back up to your first question. What's a peptide, right? So a peptide is a small protein. It's 50 amino acids or fewer in length. Amino acids are the building blocks of protein. So think about it like Legos. They're the little single Lego blocks, right? So if you have 50 or fewer Lego blocks, it's called a peptide. 50 to 100, I think, is a polypeptide. And over that, we get into proteins. But basically, they're proteins.
And they're bioidentical to what we already have going on in the body.
Correct. Okay. And so the ones that people are using have been synthesized in a lab.
Yeah.
And so the big race right now, because the easiest, most efficacious way of administering them 99% of the time is by subcutaneous injection. So this is basically the type of injection that if you have a friend who's a type 1 diabetic, they do this every freaking day, unless they have an insulin pump, right? They do a little pinch. They put in their needle, they release tiny little needle, they release, they depress the plunger, boom, it's in, it's done. If you ever want to marvel at the amazingness of and the power of something like a peptide in the human body, you want to think about the fact that you can take less than 100 micrograms, which is tiny. 1/10 of a milligram. You can introduce it into your belly fat. Let's say we'll take oxytocin, for example. So we're going to take less than 1/10 of a milligram. We're going to introduce it into our belly fat. And in less than a minute, you're going to get a head rush. Your ears are going to get hot. You're going to flush. You're going to have this sense of well-being. And about 15 to 20 minutes later, you're going to be sitting probably on the toilet.
Oh, I haven't tried the oxytocin.
And that's from an itty bitty little teeny tiny, like it's crazy to me how incredibly powerful this chemical kind of communication is at a cellular level in the human body.
Yeah. And when I'm doing this to myself, honestly, Nat, if it wasn't for you teaching my assistant, Jessica, all about peptides, I would be thinking I was nuts. And my daughter's looking at me like I'm nuts. My sister's going, what? You're injecting what into your body? Well, where do you get this from? And I'm like, it's okay. It's from a company that this woman endorses, but like supports, and that says that they're safe. And I'm like, but this is very strange. Like I'm taking this chemical, I'm mixing it myself. I'm then injecting it into my body. For all I know, I could be injecting poison into myself. Like who knows really, because it's not coming from a pharmacy. So it is frightening, but amazing.
So you have to know
what it's done for me.
Exactly. And so doing your homework, doing your due diligence, having confidence in your source is everything.
And I think that's it.
Everything.
It's like I trusted you, even though I've never met you before. I trusted you.
I have that effect
Because
on
I know
people.
so many people do. You've got a very good
Yeah.
reputation. So I knew that, okay, if you said that this is where you're getting your stuff from, then it's like, okay, I trust this source then. But yes, very powerful. I've done semaglutide. That was through a pharmacy. So that one was Ozempik, which was absolutely horrible for me. I think I was one of the non-responders, and it was a very, very bad experience. I didn't lose a single pound, even though I barely ate for a month. And we're going to get into these weight loss peptides because this is what most people want to hear about. Yeah. And then I've now been taking CJC ipamorelin, which is an HGH peptide. And I do want to ask you about the HGH peptides, because those tend to be, those in the weight loss peptides seem to be very popular.
And BPC 157 and thymosin alpha 1. So the top lines. So anyway, you tell me where you want to start.
Yeah, I know. You go too many directions.
I can keep
here.
going. So I know. Why don't you guide the conversation where you feel you want to take your listeners?
Okay. Well, let's go. Okay. So we've got that down. We know what peptides are, that, you can't really go to your doctor and get them, except for a couple of them now. So let's go into, first and foremost, the weight loss peptides, because I feel like it's just taking off. It's insane what's happening with these weight loss peptides, because they're so powerful and they work so well. As I said, I did give it a try. I thought, okay, I'm going to try this and see how it works for me. And I had a really bad experience with it, so I won't be doing those again. But so
tell me about your bad experience. Tell me about what dosage did you use, and tell me about your experience.
So I was told to start at 0.25 milligrams for a month.
Correct.
And I had the nausea, which I was expecting. So you're told that you're going to feel sick to your stomach. I almost puked a couple times. It feels like a bad hangover, basically. Really did kill the appetite. And it was a really interesting feeling, because I wanted to eat, but I only wanted to eat healthy foods, which was strange. Definitely more carbohydrates, but I didn't want unhealthy carbohydrates. I was craving things like, potato, sweet potato, maybe I had some gluten-free bread, like things like that, fruits. I wanted fruit all the time, which I'm not a fruit eater. So I was craving carbs, but I wanted nothing to do with sweets, nothing. I was like grossed out by the thought of having anything that was sweet. So I thought that was interesting. Definitely took the amount I ate went down by half, probably. So my caloric intake went way down. But I started getting severe migraines where I was in bed. I'm a migraine nurse, so these ones took me out. I was in bed for days, which usually won't happen to me. And every week that I did my shot, it just got worse and worse, until finally it was like week 4, and I'm like, I can't do it. And I didn't lose a single pound.
Okay, well, that's not surprising. So the not losing a single pound is not entirely surprising, because sometimes when I started to use semaglutide, it took over a month for me to release any weight. And when I did, it just started to come right off, but it took time. Okay. Yeah. And I did end up going up from the 0.25, which is the minimum dose, up to the 0.5 milligrams, which is where I lost most of my weight. Then I dropped back down again to 0.25, and then I kind of sat there. So a couple of comments. Number one is there are people who react really badly to semaglutide or Ozempic, and you'd be one of them. Now, some people would say you had an easy time, because some people will projectile vomit for hours and days. So this is rare. This is not common, but it does happen. I'm going to start with the bad news, and then we're going to move into the good news. So the bad news is that some people get really sick. Some people get super tired. There are 2 black box warnings on semaglutide. One is that it has been observed in a very small number of human test subjects, and I've seen it actually in my group. A few people will develop pancreatitis, and nobody really knows why. Right. But everybody knows that if you get pancreatitis, you will know, because you will feel like somebody stuck a hot knife into your gut. It's awful. So that is a risk. The other black box warning is for medullary thyroid cancer. So it's a very rare form of thyroid cancer. It was only ever observed in rats. Never have we seen a case in humans, but because it was observed in rats, it bears mentioning. So generally speaking, if you go through your health history with your doctor and you tell them you've had thyroid cancer, there's a pretty good chance they're going to be like, yeah, you know what? Not so much. Not a good idea. So those are the negatives. So we've got the people who don't respond well or who get super tired from it. You not wanting, one of the things that people report is they're kind of like meh about food. They kind of can't be bothered.
Yeah.
They're like, yeah, whatever. So that's because what's really cool about both semaglutide and its more recent, fancier, shinier cousin tirzepatide, what's super cool about them is they don't just do one thing. They don't just suppress appetite. They also raise resting metabolic rate. So people who track their sleep and their recovery, like people who wear an Oura ring or a Whoop band or any one of these devices, will notice that their HRV tanks and their resting heart rate goes up because it elevates your metabolism. So your furnace is burning hotter. That's kind of cool, right?
It is. I didn't know that about it.
It also affects the reward centers in your brain. So you're not that motivated to eat.
Yeah, I hear it's good for alcoholism too.
Well, it's good for anything, right? Anything that hits that reward system. So whether it's a sugar addiction or alcohol or whatever the case may be, it's just going to kind of take the edge off. It also happens to be really good for restoring insulin sensitivity. So someone who's very insulin resistant, all of a sudden, their body starts to be able to use glucose again. It gets better at it. Doesn't fix it right away, but it gets better at it. The people that really also don't respond well are people who are very leptin resistant. And so that's a whole other kettle of fish. It's got benefits for the heart. It's got benefits for kidneys. It's got benefits for the brain, because of course, if we're able to use glucose more efficiently, and we all know that Alzheimer's got that bad nickname, type 3 diabetes, where you become insulin resistant in your brain. Well, guess what? If all of a sudden the brain neurons are able to use glucose again for their energy, we're in a better place, right? So it's got all these side benefits. But now we can go back to the warnings. So what's really important when somebody's using semaglutide is they have to keep up their nutrient density. As a matter of fact, nutrient density has to become job one. And I'm afraid that carbs is not what you really want to prioritize. The first thing you need to prioritize is protein.
And I really had a hard time with that when I was on it.
So some of the hacks
because you feel sick.
Well, so you shouldn't feel sick all the time. So for most people, they will just feel not hungry. Right. But what we can do at that point is we get creative with protein sources. So for me, I will tell my clients, use essential amino acids with reckless abandon. Right.
Yeah.
So not branch chain amino acids, but essential amino acids, because you're giving your body those building blocks of protein to preserve lean mass, because that is one of the things that can happen also over time of semaglutide. Is there's a few things that happen. They start to realize that, oh, look at me, I'm losing weight. I had a brownie yesterday. That's all I ate, but I'm still losing weight.
Right.
Well, I'm going to have a brownie and I'm up and today and look at me. I'm still losing weight. So guess what's happening? You're starving yourself.
Yeah.
Right. And you're going to become deficient in all the microminerals and all the nutrients that your body needs to be healthy. So you're going to lose your lean mass, which means that the day you come off the semaglutide or the Ozempik or whatever it is you're using, you're going to pack the weight back on, because the appetite's going to come back. You will not have taken the opportunity to create better nutrition habits. You've lost your lean mass. The most important thing to keeping our weight down is having muscle, right? Yeah. So that we can burn calories, burn up the food, not to mention get around, be healthy, look good, all the other things. And so now you've put yourself in a real box, right? So to me, the responsible way of using these compounds is, if you're not working with a coach, that's fine, but you have to become completely obsessed with what you're eating. Stay off alcohol, because the last thing you want to do is challenge your pancreas. Remember, we have that pancreatitis problem. And we want to make sure that we prioritize protein, we have some healthy fat, and we eat our veggies. And if we can't get enough food in, then we have to lean into things like essential amino acids, green shakes, protein shakes,
yeah,
any like good quality stuff, because that's going to help you to be healthy. Right. And preserve that lean mass. The other thing I think is really important to do when you're using these compounds is you got to exercise.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. Because you and I both know that muscle is the most metabolically expensive tissue in the body. And the body's not going to make muscle if it doesn't think it needs it.
Right. And what have you seen with people like in your group and people that are using it? That I get asked about all the time in my group, which is, do I have to stay on this? Because all the research that I've come across is really for people that are obese, they're type 2 diabetic. And it all the research showed was that if they stopped using it, the weight came back. And there's nothing on the people that, like myself, maybe that could handle losing 5-10 pounds, not much, or people that just want to lose 20-30 pounds that have weight loss resistance because they're in menopause. Like that's like all the listeners listening to this, right?
Absolutely.
Where they're healthy already, they're exercising. So can it be used for short periods of time, or are they just going to end up gaining it back?
So they can use it for sure. So, I mean, I'm that person, right? So I was 20 pounds of, like, over the years, 20 pounds of almost 20 pounds of not even 20, let's say 15. I just went back to my happy place, 20 pounds down, but let's say 15 pounds of menopause weight. And and you couldn't get it off for love or money.
Yeah.
So what ends up, so this is where we go back to building better habits. Get back into exercise, dial in the nutrition. Get your microbiome. Like, you've got to basically use this time to get your house in order. Right. And then when you come off of it, you don't come off cold turkey. You start to titrate down the dose. I use now like 1.25 milligrams of tirzepatide. It's half of the lowest dose. Right. Because what I've noticed is, here's the thing, like for me, I don't want to use these peptides as the one tool that's keeping the weight off. It's like, I want to have training wheels on my bike, right? So they give me a little bit of buffer, but I still got to do the work. Yeah. I still have to eat my healthy diet. I still have to go to the gym. I still have to make sure I'm sleeping properly, that I'm managing my stress, that I'm doing all the things I know I need to do to be healthy and to keep the weight off. And then I'm only using my tirzepatide to kind of give me a little bit of wiggle room. But even then, there will come a time where I'll come off it completely. The truth of the matter is that there's not a lot of data on this. So when we're talking about people who are type 2 diabetics and obese people, these are people who have a lot of work to do. They didn't get to where they are today by magic. Yeah. Right. So I know doctors who do like 4 to 6 week programs with their patients who are basically fit, who are basically fine. They might have 5 to 10 pounds to lose. So they kind of dial it in for 4 to 6 weeks, and then they come off it, and then they maintain it. And then maybe 6 months or 8 months or a year down the road, they're going to use it again. There's a school of thought out there of some functional medicine practitioners that are believing that maybe we need to be on a tiny anti-aging dose chronically over time because of the effects on insulin sensitivity and metabolism and all that stuff. Yeah. The truth is that, and particularly in the case of tirzepatide, it only came on the market last June. Yeah. So they'd done their trials before then. So there's research and all that, but nobody was researching in someone who's basically healthy and just has a little bit weight to lose. Yeah. How do we use this? Yeah. Right? And
my thought was, if we could work with the set point of our body weight set point. And I've told some of the ladies this in the membership group that are using it. They're like, well, now what do I do? Like, one lady was like, I can't lose any more weight. Like,
yes. I gotta get off that dose.
And I said that. Exactly. I said, go to a shot every second week and then go to every third week. I said, but do that for wean off for a couple of months so that your body has a chance to make this its new set point.
Correct.
And I think then that it should work. But
I completely agree. And you've been coaching her on her diet, and you've been coaching her on her lifestyle, and she's
replacing
preserved her lean mass and managing her hormones properly, taking care of her thyroid, all of those things, making sure that the house is in order, and you'll be able to titrate down and off.
Yeah.
So
I've heard too that because the brain isn't getting the signal that you're starving when you're taking them, so then it doesn't slow down the metabolism and slow your thyroid down.
Yeah.
Which I think that's amazing. Yeah. Okay.
It's really amazing, but it just, to me, it just speaks, and it may be even a little different. The story might be even a bit different than that. I don't know for sure. But what I would say is, to me, it just keeps coming back to the same thing. And I'm like a broken record. Nutrient density, like make sure you're feeding your body. And this may be the time to take a really good supplement, right? A few good supplements, like a great multivitamin, get those omegas in, like, because you're not going to be, I mean, in a best case scenario, we don't get everything we need from our diet. So now when we're eating even less, I think it bears mentioning that it probably is a good idea to lean into a few good quality supplements to make sure that you're really getting on a micronutrient level, you're giving your body what it needs.
Yeah. Yeah. Because you'd start losing your hair and your skin will start going funny, and the hormones.
So that's the protein. Yeah. That's the protein. So we got pretty drawn into those two. I mean, they are the hottest peptides on the market, but there are a few others that I think are worth exploring a little bit. And maybe if if it depends what you want, like there's the short chain peptides and then there's the long chain peptides.
Well, I've got some here that I want you to talk about. Maybe this is a slightly selfish, everybody, but no, these are peptides I think that seem to be the very popular ones that I wanted you to talk about. All
right.
Well, just before we get off the weight loss ones, there's one that I saw, AOD 9604, fragment 176191. These are just ridiculous names.
There's those marketing people again.
Could we not make that a little bit easier? But this is a weight loss one that I've read you should only take for short periods of time. Just quickly, have you had experience with that one?
Yeah. So AOD 9604, AOD actually stands for anti-obesity drug 9604.
Okay.
It's a fragment of growth hormone. And as it turns out, it does a stunning job of helping bunnies to lose weight. And it's not that good for people. Oh. So it kind of works for people, but it kind of doesn't. So it's been very hit and miss, what I've seen. And it's part of a family of peptides called growth hormone secretagogues. And so we've got growth hormone releasing hormones and we have growth hormone releasing peptides. And so what these peptides do, but actually I think what AOD is, it's like a fragment of growth hormone, right? And so it, in theory, was supposed to help people to lose weight. Only it doesn't. I mean, it does sometimes, but not often. So particularly when you put it up against something like semaglutide or tirzepatide, there's no point even going there. What it is really interestingly good for is somebody at some point, and you kind of wonder, how did people even think of these things? But they did figure out that if they injected AOD 9604 with hyaluronic acid into arthritic knees of bunnies, it would almost grow back their cartilage.
Wow. Yeah. How does somebody figure that one out?
Well, who would have thought of such a thing, right? So, but possibly because it has these growth hormone properties. And so there are now functional medical doctors in the US who will inject AOD 9604 with hyaluronic acid into a joint capsule. Do not try this at home. You need to do this under imaging, somebody who really knows what they're doing. And they get incredible results for their patients who have arthritis.
Great, but not so great for weight loss. Okay, good to know. I was going to buy it.
So these growth hormone fragments. So CJC1295 and ipamorelin. You mentioned
that's my next
earlier.
One. Yeah.
So these are a couple. One is a growth hormone releasing hormone. The other one is a growth hormone releasing peptide. And what they do is they signal your brain to produce and release your own growth hormone.
Okay.
Super cool. Right?
Yes.
So what we're doing here, we're basically just sending we're sending a messenger that's going to send a message to the centers in the brain responsible for this in the first place, saying, hey, we need some more growth hormone. And why would we need more growth hormone? Well, as we age, we don't make as much growth hormone. Maybe we get lazy. We're not sleeping as well. We're not, we're too stressed. Like whatever it is, we just start making less and less growth hormone. And because we make less and less growth hormone, we don't recover as well. We don't repair from injuries as well. We also don't sleep as well. And we don't hang on to lean mass. And there are properties about these peptides that help to burn fat. So that little combination for some people is all they need. They use it at night before bed in a fasted state, because when you're asking the body to release growth hormone, you don't want any insulin in the house, because insulin's going to shut that off. Right.
Oh.
So we want to be fasted. We use it right before bed. What's really cool is if we entice the body to release growth hormone at night, it's going to help us to get more deep sleep. And we know that if we get more deep sleep, we wake up in the morning, we don't have as many cravings, we feel better, we have more energy, we might get to the gym, all of those things. Plus, it helps the body to recover. Plus, it helps to build lean mass. And it has these not super pronounced, but for some people more pronounced than others. Some people are really high responders to this. They actually lose fat. It's really good for skin, because growth hormone is good for skin. It's got some cognitive benefits. It's good for anti-aging. So I will say that that combination for some people is phenomenal.
Yeah. It's started to grow my hair back. I lost my hair when I got COVID, and it's starting. I've got all these sprouts coming on my head now. And I'm like, the only thing I've changed is that I added in CJC ipamorelin. I did find I had to get on a lower dose because I was so hungry taking it, like ravenous. I couldn't stop eating all day long. And I was like, is this from that peptide? And then it does do something with the ghrelin centers in the brain.
It can. Well, so ipamorelin is a ghrelin mimetic, but it shouldn't really drive hunger. But if it does, that's another reason to use it at night.
Oh, I was using it at night, and it was all the next day. And when I wouldn't use it at night, I didn't have it. So I lowered the dose, and then I didn't have it anymore.
Yeah. So you may have also been using too much. The other thing that people may notice if they're using too much is they develop water retention. You can also get a transient increase in blood pressure. So people who have high blood pressure, this may not be the best combination for them. Sometimes you'll get some flushing, but all of these things should resolve very quickly within 20 minutes. If they don't, a lot of people will have a histamine response or an allergic response to these peptides. I'm one of them. Like, I used them without issue for about a month or so. And then all of a sudden my immune system was like, yeah, no, this is not working for us anymore.
Interesting. So, and what about I was listening to a guy talk at A4M at the longevity thing. And this was a workshop that just happened in Las Vegas, but he was saying that the research shows that growth hormone will decrease your lifespan. But is that so is that the same as the peptide? Like, do you?
Well, no. So the peptide, don't forget, all the peptide's doing is increasing your own growth hormone release. So based on, so I think that this is one of the most interesting arguments in the longevity space, right? We see that people are saying, well, growth hormone is aging. It's pro-aging. It's going to make you old. But on the other hand, if you had no growth hormone, guess what? You'd feel like crap, you'd look like crap. And when you broke something, you wouldn't be able to fix it. Like, not having growth hormone on board is like not having a handyman to fix things in your house that break. So what you need is the sweet spot. What nobody really knows is what is the sweet spot for growth hormone to age well. It's like people who say having too much muscle is not good for as we age because of mTOR, right? If you have too much mTOR, you make too much. Okay, well, I'm calling bullshit on the generalized statement, right? No, being a bodybuilder, like having bodybuilder muscles, even if you could keep bodybuilder muscles into your 80s and 90s, wouldn't be smart. But you better have lean muscle mass so that you can be functional, right? You have to be able to move healthily, to be able to get exercise, to get out of your chair, to carry your groceries, like, I don't want to be 90 years old and sitting in a rocking chair. That's not my goal. My goal is to be 90 years old and doing stuff, going on hikes and doing fun things. I'm not going to be able to do that if I don't have enough lean muscle. So it's all about nuance. And I find like people just like to make these sweeping statements. And at the end of the day, what the real statement is, you need the right amount of muscle to age. You need the right amount of growth hormone to age. And there's not a magic number to any of these things. It's going to depend on the person, because like I don't respond well to growth hormone secretagogues, for example. I don't know why that is, but I don't. So I'm going to have to figure out other ways to increase my growth hormone. And this is the other thing that people mustn't forget. It's not just about peptides, right? There's sauna, there's lifting heavy weights, there's getting proper sleep. Like there's other ways of stimulating your growth hormone. So the peptides are super sexy and they're really fun and fun. They're super sexy and they can do amazing things. But let's not forget that we have to prepare the terrain.
The fundamentals.
We still have to do the work. And that's where, when we go back to those weight loss peptides, don't be like falling into the arms of the weight loss peptide and saying, okay, you take over. I'm not doing anything. I'm just going to sit here and stuff as much carrot cake into my face as I can manage to eat, which I can't manage to eat that much. Because I think, because why do people want to lose weight? They say they want to be healthier, but really they just want to look good.
Yeah, 100%.
So if I could eat all the crap I wanted and look good, I'd be pretty happy.
Yeah.
I mean, I wouldn't, but you know what I'm saying? Most people would, right? So we have to kind of move past that. We have to grow up a little bit and say, if we're going to use peptides, then we're going to use them responsibly when we need them, as little as possible to get to the outcome that we're going for.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I say the same thing about hormone replacement, because 95% of hormone clinics, it's like, slap on your hormones, see you later, or inject your pellets, bye-bye. And I always tell women, it's not that easy. Like for some people, sure, slap them on, they go out the door and they do great. But typically it's not that simple. And you really need to have all these foundational pieces down. Like you need to have a good digestive system. You need to be pooping every day. You need to be exercising so you can circulate those hormones that you're putting on. Like there's so many things to it. Liver health, like you can't be drinking every day if you're using estrogen replacement. That's not a good idea, and these things, these fundamental pieces still have to be a part of it. But what I love about the peptide thing is, for people like myself and like so many of my clients that really are doing everything right, they're exercising, they're eating well, they're taking the hormones, they're doing exactly what I tell them to do, and they still have this stubborn weight and they're not able to put muscle on as well, or they're in pain, they've got inflammation, and they're like, why? And they're just like, and then you take some of this stuff and it's quite amazing what starts to happen in the body. And it's like, oh, I just needed this little helping hand. And I am not against using these little tools and these little interventions that can make a difference in how my body looks and feels. Like, I think bring it on. This is technology. This is where we're at right now. Right.
Yeah. It's like, it's like antibiotics, right?
Yes.
We love to beat up on it and pour antibiotics. They're bad. They destroy your microbiome, this, that. But the truth of the matter is that they have a place. They get overused. Like everything else gets overused because it's an easy answer.
Yeah.
So the real answer is use antibiotics sparingly when you need them at the right time in the right context, and they will be helpful to you. Use peptides sparingly at the right time in the right context, and they also can be super helpful. But I'll bet you there's another peptide out of a completely different category that you were going to ask me about.
Well, there's several, but we're running out of time.
I know we are.
I really am very interested in thymosin alpha-1. I almost bought that one, and the DSIP for deep sleep. So you want to just touch on them briefly?
Yeah. So DSIP, very hit and miss. About 50% of people respond to it. The other 50% are either non-responders or very slow responders.
Okay.
So DSIP it's like AOD, that it has a name that oversells it completely. Whereas BPC 157 has a name that nobody knows what it means. Well, body protective compound actually kind of does, or CJC 1295 has a name that means nothing. DSIP, deep sleep inducing peptide. You're like, holy crap,
bring it on.
Like, bring it, right?
Yeah.
But I'm going to poke it and I'm going to close my eyes and life is going to be perfect. And it doesn't exactly work that way most of the time. So it's one of those peptides that it really takes a lot of tweaking. Some people need to use it in the morning. Some people use it at noon. Some people use it in the afternoon. Finding the right dose is tricky. You can't use it every day. I feel like there's better ways to work on sleep than DSIP. Definitely there's people that have done really well with it, but generally speaking, it's not the first place I go. Thymosin alpha-1, completely different story. It's as an immune modulator. It brings up your Th1, the innate immune system, which is often depressed. And so balances it out with Th2. Really helpful for people with autoimmune conditions. It can be very helpful. People use it prophylactically during flu season to keep that immune system fit and ready to respond if they need it. It can be used at much higher doses when people do get sick to help get through what they're going through. I mean, it's a really interesting peptide. It does have orphan drug status in the States for hepatitis. One of these days I'm going to look it up. One of the hepatitises.
Yeah. And cancer? Was it cancer was one of them?
It has, well, I mean, it has anti-tumor properties. There's actually a variant of TA1 that's RGDR that has been shown to have anti-tumor properties to specific types of tumors. Wow. It's a thymus peptide, right? So it comes from the thymus gland. It's really interesting.
Yeah. Is there any for adrenal insufficiency?
So that's when we get into the other side of peptides. This is where we go to short chain peptides, which would be a whole other podcast. I think.
That's part 2.
But I will say they're called bioregulators.
Okay.
And they, in the bioregulator world, what we're talking about here are peptides that are 2 to 4 amino acids long and that are epigenetic switches. So these little 2 to 4 amino acid long peptides basically are able to get through the cellular membrane. They get through the nuclear membrane, they attach to DNA, and now they get the DNA to produce proteins that help to rejuvenate and restore function to the pancreas, the thyroid, the adrenal glands, the pineal gland, the thymus gland, the lungs, the kidneys, the heart, the lining of your blood vessels. So there's different bioregulator peptide for each one of those and a few more that I didn't mention. And those are the peptides that people are using to reverse their biological age.
Wow. Jeez. Oh my God. Okay. That's a whole nother episode.
It is. But when you talk about sleep, there's one in particular I'll mention because it's probably the most famous. It's epitalon, which I think you actually mentioned earlier.
No.
Or epitalon, Epitalon. And epitalon is the pineal gland bioregulator. And so the pineal gland is a little pine nut shaped gland in your brain, and it is the master endocrine regulator of your system. It also regulates circadian rhythm. It also activates telomerase, which is the enzyme that actually would break down your telomeres. So this helps to elongate your telomeres.
Which is good for anti-aging.
And it's really good for sleep.
Oh, okay.
And it can help balance hormones.
See, this is the problem. It's like when I get onto these websites, now I'm like a kid in a candy store. I'm like, oh, that sounds cool. I would like to try that. I'd like to try that. I'd like to try that. These are all sound so good, right? But you have to be.
It's a rabbit hole.
It is a rabbit hole.
I'm still in the bottom of the rabbit hole.
Yeah. So when people work with you, Nat, is that what you're doing? Is you're helping them kind of come up with peptides that will help with whatever they're facing right at that time?
So if I'm coaching someone, if somebody's working with me in a full-on 6 to 12 month coaching relationship, we're doing it all. We're doing nutrition, supplementation, sleep, stress, the whole 9 yards. And then peptides and all the biohacking cool technology and stuff like that come in as well, but as needed. Right. So not everybody uses peptides. I mean, these days, everybody who comes to me wants to use peptides. So we will talk about them. I will spend a fair amount of time educating people. The bioregulators are becoming the biggest thing that I'm working with people with. I will use, we'll use BPC 157, thymosin alpha-1, TB4 for certain things. Like we didn't even get into healing of musculoskeletal injuries and, the Wolverine stack and all that stuff. But beyond that, the bioregulators, like those are the ones when we're looking at longevity and health span, we're wearing out think about it as we're wearing out our parts as we age. What if we had something that can bring them back? What if we had something that can restore our parts?
Yeah.
reclaim the tread on your tires, as it were.
Yeah. And you've got two groups, one that you've just started, which is very exciting. I know many people actually that are in it, and that is your Mighty Networks group. And that's where you can really get a lot of help. I feel like it sounds like that's the place to be, is your Mighty Networks group. It's very affordable. It's $15 a month?
For now. The price is going to go up.
It's going to go up, everyone. So get in there.
That's the founder's rate. And my promise to the people who came in first and have helped me to establish the group is that they'll be at that rate for as long as they're a member of the group.
Yeah. They're grandfathered in.
But we do really, so that's a little, right now it's a very intimate community.
Yeah.
And, I'll do live Q&As in there. I bring in experts to talk about different topics. Sometimes they give people the opportunity to try new things. Like, it's pretty fun. And then, and then there's the big group. Then there's the Facebook community, the Optimizing Superhuman Performance. It's free and it's crazy. Like, it's really fun, but it's big, wild, and woolly.
So like 14,000 people in her Facebook group.
That's a lot of people.
But when you're going into this world and you're new to it, you absolutely need the help. Like, I'm just lucky that all of my assistant and my coworker are both in your group. So I go to them and say, okay, what do I need to do? How much am I injecting? What am I mixing this with? What about this peptide? What about that peptide? Oh yeah. And then they've learned everything they know all came from you, Nat. I feel like I've cheated. I feel like I better go pay for your group and pay you back for all this information that's come down the pipeline at me.
Well, it's all good. I will also do like an hour deep dive with people sometimes. Like, sometimes someone doesn't want to sign on as a client. They want to join the group, but they need that grounding, right? They need someone to talk to them for an hour and help them to get their bearings. So I'll do like 1 hour consults with people sometimes, just to help them to get their feet on the ground if they don't have assistants like you do, who are in a group getting all the information kind of thing. Because, I feel for people, right? You come into this world and you're kind of looking around and, it's not like there's no information. The problem is there's too much information and you don't know who you can listen to and who you can trust. And it's a little bit what you talked about earlier, like how do you know who you can trust when you're buying these things? Like, where do you begin? And you don't want to be the person like my original partner in the group who, he said, Nat, I found BPC 157 at $5 a vial. It's amazing. And so he, and he was coming from like a country far, far away that shall remain nameless. And he ordered like a whack of it. And the next thing you know, I'm getting a picture on Facebook Messenger of this poor guy. Like, he has hives all up and down his body. Like, he had a massive, like, whatever was in that vial
was not
as advertised.
Oh, that's
so
frightening.
But you know what? For the two of us, it's what I call a super cheap cosmic lesson, because he wasn't marked forever. It was just a bad histamine response, and he was able to get through it in the whole 9 yards. And we both learned our lesson really, really 100%. Fast, very early in the game.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Oh, that is frightening. Well, maybe I'll just have to book an appointment with you, because I just don't have time for a group. I don't have time for all that.
It takes time to curate.
When you have your own group, it's hard to go into other groups. Okay, well, we're going to have you back for part 2 in a couple months, and we'll get into the bioregulars, and I've got like a million more questions about peptides. So we're definitely having you back. It's been a pleasure. You're fantastic. And thank you very much for coming on the show.
Karen, you're the best. Thank you so much. I'm so glad we did this.